What's up, guys? So the first fight that I'm going to talk about is actually last night's fight. I guess last night's fights between Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. and Brian Vera, as well as Adonis Stevenson versus Tavoris Cloud. And I'm going to start off with Adonis Stevenson versus Tavoris Cloud because I have a lot to say about the Chavez fight. Amazing performance by Adonis Stevenson. If you guys can check out the fight, if you missed it, you should definitely check it out. Adonis is definitely, he has what it takes to be the new top dog at 175, except for Sergey Kovalev, which could give him a lot of trouble. Adonis, he just looked fantastic. He's fighting off the back foot, hitting some really hard counter shots all night, and Cloud just didn't have anything for him. Cloud really did get exposed by Bernard Hopkins as being, somewhat of a flat-footed, slow plotter, and he really didn't have anything for Stevenson. I mean, Stevenson was moving around all night. His cardio looked fantastic, and Cloud's got some big power, and he just could not implement that on Stevenson. He showed a good chin, but that was about all that Cloud showed last night. So Stevenson pulled off that victory pretty easily. He called out all the top guys. He's got 2 titles now, so you know that he's the real deal. And I would really love to see Stevenson in some big fights coming up, especially as a Canadian. It's great to see a fellow Canadian on top of the light heavyweight division. Another fight that I forgot happened last night was Jean Pascal versus what was his name? I'll get his name for you. Anyways, it was just a warm-up fight for Pascal. He's had about a year off. He has really been inactive because he's had some major shoulder injuries. He had some tough injuries that he's really just been able to bounce back from now. I'm sure you guys saw his last fight where he got his arm caught between the ropes and his shoulder got injured. So, that was I think a 6-month layoff rehabbing his shoulder. So he's back and he looked fantastic. And I'm just going to look up the name of the guy that he fought. Talk about him because he fought George Blades. Now, George Blades, I'd never heard of George Blades before because he's been one of those guys that's been an on and off type fighter. He'll come fight for a few fights and then he'll go back into retirement again and wait for some big bouts. Really a journeyman type fighter. He showed a great chin last night against Pascal, took some huge bombs and stayed in there, but he really didn't have anything for Pascal, so he eventually got blown out in the 5th round and lost the TKO. Now for the main event of the night, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. versus Brian Vera. Now, Brian Vera has showed us a lot over the past few years. He showed us that he's a really hard worker. He always comes to fight. He always comes to win. And he always shows toughness, a chin, and some versatility as a boxer. But he is more of a basic brawler, if I ever saw one. And he was fighting Chavez, who is, I would say, a very good brawler, especially because of his chin and his power and his sheer size, because he cuts so much weight to get to middleweight. Now, this bout was actually supposed to be a super middleweight bout, and Chavez could not make the weight because obviously Chavez had better things to do, like eating chips or sleeping, eating more chips, Harvey's, McDonald's, whatever. Everything and anything but training, because last night was a horrible performance by Chavez. And it's one thing to have a name and have a lot of talent, and it's another thing to use it. Now, Chavez has everything that it takes to become a huge superstar in boxing. He has the name, his father, Julio Cesar Chavez Sr., one of the greatest boxers of all time in some legendary fights. And not to mention, Chavez Jr. has some heavy hands, some really decent boxing skills, but last night he proved that he does not have what it takes to stay at the top level for a long time. The only thing that he does have is the corruption by the promoter Top Rank, and I've really had some big qualms about the athletic commission and the judging in boxing lately, and especially the promoters. And I have to say that last night, finally talking about the fight, it was an okay fight. It really wasn't that great of a fight. So if you missed it, you're not really missing out on much. But Chavez looked good at the beginning, was moving around a lot more than usual. Not the typical come forward style, wear him down like he usually does. And Vera really took it to him the whole fight. I mean, Chavez looked good at the beginning, but Vera just kept on coming. And after about round 4, Chavez really didn't have anything for him. Vera outlanded him at least 2-1. And Chavez really didn't throw any combinations like he usually does. He just didn't have the gas tank for it. So, he pot-shotted his way to the end and survived, but Vera had him in trouble in some points, and really Vera just showed the quality that he has as an opponent. And he's not just an opponent, he's coming to win. I would say Vera almost swept the last 6 or 7 rounds, but somehow Chavez ended up getting the unanimous decision, and we all know why. Chavez is a huge moneymaker for Top Rank, and another loss on his record after his loss in his last fight to Sergio Martinez would destroy his marketability as a boxer. But the fact that he lost to Martinez is not so bad, but the fact that he would lose to Vera would not be so good for him. And of course they robbed Vera. I guess the only good thing for Vera coming out of that fight is the fact that Chavez couldn't even make the 168-pound limit. So, he got 6 figures for that, since he accepted a 174-pound catch weight. Yeah, it was not good. It was such a terrible, terrible thing that continually happens in the sport of boxing. And I'm going to be talking more in the future about the corruption in boxing and just how bad it's been getting, and what we can do as fans of the sport to change this kind of thing. But moving on, obviously they want to set up Chavez with a big fight. They're looking at Andre Ward. I know Andre Ward has showed a lot of interest in fighting Chavez at 168 for the title, and I think that fight will probably be the end of Chavez, because Ward is going to absolutely school the Chavez that showed up last night, and it doesn't look like Chavez has the motivation to stay on top for long. I mean, he might have a few more decent wins, but I don't think he'll do much after he fights Ward. You know what? I'm going to end it on that note. This has been The Truth About Boxing. Tony here. Next video, I'll be talking to you about, I don't fucking know. So stay tuned.